We move to the next news video, and it's a conversation about CM Punk and AEW Collision, as AEW Collision was announced last night or yesterday afternoon at the upfronts for the Warner Brothers Discovery, as AEW has a second weekly program coming on June the 17th, that being AEW Collision. And pretty much there has been a lot of talk about what AEW Collision will be, if AEW is going to have a hard brand split, a soft brand split, any brand split. What the future will hold for AEW is still up in the air as far as Collision and the expectation for that brand. But the expectation was that CM Punk would be a main feature and a main cog in the machine of AEW for AEW Collision. But the fact of the matter is, Punk was excluded from AEW Collision and the announcement. And the reason has came to light that it seems to me, though it is a little unclear as to why Punk was excluded, it does seem as though Punk was excluded for the reason being that there was a disagreement on how to bring back Ace Steel, as it seems like Punk may have expected that his longtime friend would be with him backstage at Collision events, but AEW had a different idea, as they want to bring back Punk, but they don't want to bring back Ace Steel. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't blame them, because Punk actually is an asset to AEW. Ace Steel seems to be a liability. In my opinion, Ace Steel does not need to be in AEW. AEW does not need to do Punk that favor and bring him back, him being Ace Steel, because, frankly, Ace Steel is not the one that would make AEW money. Ace Steel is not the reason why AEW has a second show. Punk is the reason. Ace Steel is not under contract with AEW anymore. Punk is under contract with AEW. And to a degree, Punk does have to abide by AEW's contract or be bought out. And I don't think AEW should bring back Ace Steel. I don't think AEW necessarily needs to bring back Ace Steel. I don't think AEW should even think about bringing back Ace Steel, because there's no reason why you should cave in to Punk's demands, because Punk is not the one that should be making demands. Tony Khan is the one that should be making demands, because Punk's the one that should be listening to Tony, as far as, frankly, Tony should be fed up with Punk playing the diva and demand that either Punk come back or sit out the remainder of his contract, and understand that AEW is not going to let him resuscitate his legacy in the wrestling business if he's not going to play ball with them and wants a protector backstage. This isn't the 80s. You don't need somebody to protect your interests backstage, especially somebody who did what Ace Steel did and handled himself the way Ace Steel did, as we learned through the fallout from the Brawl Out at All Out. Apparently, things are back in doubt between AEW and CM Punk, and the question remains if Punk will be back with AEW or not. And apparently, according to Warner Brothers Discovery, Punk is not affiliated with AEW Collision. Punk is not affiliated with AEW. And though Warner Brothers Discovery does believe that Punk could resuscitate things with AEW, it does seem as though that may not happen within the next month or so before Collision makes its debut on Warner Brothers Discovery programming. So I will keep you guys up to date on that, as I, much like you guys, are more than likely fed up with the conversations about Punk being a diva and not just putting the AEW, what's best for AEW and the fans before his personal gain. and what he wants out of that, because the fact of the matter is, it's like I said, AEW doesn't need to play ball with Punk. Punk needs to play ball with AEW. AEW doesn't need Ace Steel. Even if Punk makes the demand that if Ace Steel does not come back, then Punk's not coming back to AEW, then I would just tell Punk, fine, if you want to play like that, then sit out the rest of your contract. And we'll prove we don't need you. Because to say AEW doesn't have the talent already on the roster that they could make do with it, yes, they may not have the major drawing power that Punk does, but the fact of the matter is, I'd be getting tired if I was Tony Khan about the idea of having to keep playing ball with Punk and fight to get Punk back, because you never should have to fight to get somebody back if they're under contract. There should be some form of compromise. At least some desire to compromise. But before we go, it is not just bad news for AEW, it is some good news, as the Hardys and Isaiah Cassidy will be fighting Ethan Page and the Guns at Double or Nothing in 2 weeks, or next week. And also, Anarchy in the Arena has been announced, with the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club, meeting the Elite, that is Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Adam Page, in an 8-man tag team match next week at Double or Nothing, in the return of Anarchy in the Arena. And also at Double or Nothing, it will be the TBS champion Jade Cargill against Taya Valkyrie. The question is Taya Valkyrie the one that will defeat Jade Cargill? As I've said this, Jade Cargill cannot stay undefeated forever. And the fact of the matter is, if Taya is the one to defeat Jade Cargill, then you need to figure out the identity of Jade outside of her undefeated streak. And the fact is, that's the question. Does Jade have an identity yet outside of her undefeated streak and being TBS champion? If not, then you need to think about that before you have her drop the title. Otherwise, she'll flounder without that championship and without the identifying characteristic of being undefeated. With that being said, though, we are all looking forward to an action-packed weekend of wrestling next week for Memorial Day weekend with Double or Nothing, Night of Champions, and NXT Battleground, as well as Under Siege from Impact Wrestling, and the Crockett Cup from the National Wrestling Alliance. It's going to be an action-packed week of wrestling next week, so stay tuned for that. But with that being said, that is it for the news, and I will see you in the next